campus at Salle in Concord, and I'm joined by Terry Eidson. Terry, first of all, I'd like to thank you for remembering me because it's been forever. It's been about 15 or 16 years since I've seen you, since days I was talking to like Atari Callan and like Dave Biller.
Yep, those are good days. Those are great players in our program. We've had a long history of them, that's for sure.
Right. And you pretty much, I remember a lot, Terry. But I mean, you remember everything. I mean, you've been here not since day one, but I can remember like 25 years. You've been here like 30 years?
Yeah, this is my 33rd year.
Right. And what I find interesting is, I don't know, it's not great research, but I meant, when would have been the first time that you were on the De La Salle campus?
Well, the very first time I was on here as a high school football player for Moreau, which is now Moreau Catholic, in the fall of 1975.
Right. And you were telling me, what was the score of that game?
Yeah, we tied De La Salle 6-6, and we ended up winning the Moreau's first ever CAL championship. The tie was a huge upset, and Al Vermeil, who is Dick Vermeil's brother, is our football coach, and he wasn't too happy and kind of took it out of us next week in practice.
Right, because people don't know this. I mean, they remember Bob Ladouceur in the 70s. You were supposed to beat De La Salle, I think.
Yeah, back then, Ed Hall, he was the first coach that had to start the program, and it's never easy to start a program in high school, but he did a great job of getting the ball rolling. And I think, Bob, when he came in 1979, Ed had gotten things all set up for him. He had a good freshman class, so he left him with some talent, and he just kind of built it from there.
I think Ed Hall went on to DVC for years, I think.
Yeah, well, he's still at DVC, and of course he was at UC Berkeley for a few years as well. But he's a fantastic coach, a good friend of ours, and he's been a great, I wouldn't say observer of De La Salle football, but he's been a great fan of our program, and has really been very happy to see the success of a team that he started.
Right. And then I think Bob, you mentioned 1979. When did you first meet Bob Ladouceur?
I met Bob in the summer of 1981 at St. Mary's College.
It was it a camp or?
No, I was in taking theology classes, and he was taking a communication class, and we were staying at that time. They don't have the program anymore, but it was the first year's brothers residency at Benilde Hall, which is now an educational building. He was there for a week. I was there for the whole summer, and I just met him there.
Right, and then you mentioned, what was your first job at De La Salle? Obviously, that's where we are. Talk about, where are we right now? You're explaining where we are. People know as your coach, but there's a whole other side to you.
Well, when I first started at De La Salle, I was a social studies teacher and a religious studies teacher, and I was involved in campus ministry because I just come out of a first-year program out of the Brothers, which was called the pre-novice program, and I was beginning to take some graduate theology classes in the summer. I took some undergrad theology classes at St. Mary's because I already graduated from UCLA, so I was in like the first-year program, which was usually freshmen or sophomores in college, but I was one of the older ones in my group. So I came to De La Salle, and it was basically I was hired to teach and do campus ministry, and any coaching I was to do, they said was on my own. So I just kind of weaseled my way into the JV practice field and coached with my roommate, Pete Kelly.
Right. And was it defense at the time?
Well, back then I came in after the summer, so it was just the fall of my first year. So I just helped another one of Bob's first year, when he coached in his first year, Mark Mullen, was coaching defensive backs. And Keith Schuler, who played for Bob as well as Ed, and he played at University of Pacific. He was the defensive coordinator. So I was just helping out with the DBs and helping coach their wide receivers.
Right. At the time, people don't remember. I mean, De La Salle, it was on Saturday afternoons. I mean, there were no lights. I mean, were there more people on the field or in the stands?
Yeah, it was pretty slim pickings back when we first started back in those years. It was the Concord heat, especially in the fall, can be oppressive at times, and that's how we ended up getting lights, because we had to play a game in 107-degree weather one day, and the game was called at halftime because one of the refs almost died of heat exhaustion, literally, and we had to call the game at halftime. We said, we got to get lights. It's just getting harder and harder to play. That was on grass. You tried to play on the turf like today, there's no way you could have probably played that game.
Right. And I'm trying to think, how it started slowly, but I meant was it, I think 82, that was the first, was that Rick Bianchina? You're testing my memory. What team was that in 82?
Ricky was actually, that was my first year when I was the JV coach. That was Rich Pelletier, Tim McGuire, Jim Donnelly, Pat Oswald. That was Brian. I could go through the whole team.
Yeah.
There's a lot of their sons have now come through, the Vanderklets and all that. Oswald, there's kids have already come, and one of them's already graduated from our school. But yeah, that was that team. Ricky Bianchina was the 85 team.
Yeah, it's 85. That would have been like Robbie Hinckley as well.
Right.
Yeah, okay. I'm just trying to think of the key moments.
Jim Hinckley.
Jimmy Hinckley, yeah.
Rob, that's true. Both of them played back to back. That's right.
Fair enough. Yeah. I think they both went to Stanford.
They did.
Yeah. Were they the first first Pac-10 recruits that De La Salle had, or I don't know. I can't remember.
Yeah, Scott Rasmussen went to Colorado in that 82, and Tim McGuire, of course, went to West Point. And I think the Hinckley boys were the first Stanford recruits that, at least in the Bob Ladouceur era. I know that. I remember back in the day that Matt Taylor went to Northwestern from De La Salle. I was just in high school, so I don't know exactly back in the 70s how many kids went where, but I know that in Bob's era, the Hinckley's were the first one to make it to Stanford.
Right. And I'm trying to think, building the program, it was a series of Bellarmine, about 85, 86. Those were important games.
Well, the Bellarmine was, I consider when we went undefeated in 80, the team went 8, which I did not coach on that team. I was coaching JVs, but the 82 team was the first undefeated team in De La Salle history. Then 83, we got knocked out in the first round of the playoffs. And then from 84 on, till today, we've been in the North Coast section final game. And so that was our quarterback coach, Mark Pinella, when he took on Ed Lloyd, who was coaching Cardinal. We played Cardinal Newman, who at the time had the state record, 47 consecutive wins, which is the record that we eventually broke. He was coaching that team. And that was a great high school football team. We beat them. And then that's kind of started the ball rolling for NCS appearances. But 85 kind of opened the eyes to everybody that De La Salle was kind of a Bay Area, starting to become a Bay Area power when we took on Bellarmine and beat them down in San Jose. I think it was 37-13.
Bellarmine, the history, a long time ago, was like Dan Pastorini.
Yeah, my brother went to Bellarmine, and I was in his class, yeah.
Wow. I didn't know this. Okay, you can confirm this. And then, Dan, I always remember handing off to Earl Campbell and throwing to Mel Renfro when he was with the Houston Oilers, always losing to Pittsburgh. Everyone lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers. But then another key is the rivalry of Monte Vista. I think it was like 86 and 87. I remember to talk about that. Because Bob's from that area, I think, or no?
Well, not only is he from that area, the Monte Vista, I wouldn't call it a rivalry back in those days. They were just a really good football team, and in 87 they beat us in the Coliseum 14-7. 14-13. I'm sorry, because we went for 2.
Exactly. We'll touch on that. Rob Forrester. He hit the pylon. The ref was out. The ref's name, and tell that story. He was out of position.
Well, he was at the 5-yard line, so he wasn't there at the pylons. But the main thing is though that you have to understand that there wasn't a rivalry because Bob's brother Tom coached on the Monte Vista team, and I knew him. We were good friends. And then Rob Stockberger, who was Bob's roommate in college at San Jose State, was also the head coach. So, we were all pretty good friends. So I would, the rivalry kind of took off, I think, probably in the 90s and all that, but back then, that was just an NCS championship game that broke a 44-game win streak at the time. So, they just, regardless if Rob hit the pile or not, they outplayed us that game. They deserved to win. So I really don't have any problem with that.
Right. No, actually, I was at Monte Vista recently, and I'm glad you don't have a problem with it, but because the banner is hanging in their gym there, and what was the name of the ref, though? You remember the ref's name, or do you? I forget.
I'm taking the fifth on that one.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. That's also, we've been trying to set this interview up since like August. And, well, the only thing I'll say is he did mention the guy's name in August. So Terry's been teaching and coaching, so he's forgotten in the last 6 months, so that's okay. Yeah. No, the other one I was thinking of is just memories right across the canal, Ygnacio. I remember we were looking at the Contra Costa Times. I think they had like a photo. It was like Bamberger. He was a basketball, but he played tight end on football. And I think it was Chris Walsh like trying to climb the fence. And it's like Twan Van Lee, and I don't know who De La Salle had trying to repel them. But that was like about 1987. Did you remember that? I mean, that was a big deal.
Yeah, I think it was Sean McGarry was the quarterback, and Twan was the first Vietnamese-born football player to get a Division I scholarship, right, which I'm sure there's been plenty more since, but he went to Stanford as right, well. Right. And, those were great. Those, some great, rivalries back then. I mean, there's some great football being played. One of the biggest games I ever played was, I forget what year it was. It might have been 87, 88, Thanksgiving at DVC. Ignacio Valley and us, yeah. It was a huge
semifinals, I think.
Yes, yeah.
No, it was a big deal. No, you mentioned Twan Van Lee. People forget that name. He was great, and he did go to Stanford, and he had that one blocked. It was in the. You remember the guy?
Blocked. Was it a field goal or a punt? I think it was a field goal.
Like a PAT. Yeah. I think it made like a tie, like in the big game. I mean, right. Other memories. And for me, I can remember a lot, and then I forget some. I have a big memories when I was taping games back in the late '90s. But before we get there, it ended and it began with Pittsburgh at the Coliseum. What are your memories of that? I mean, a terrible question, but I meant,
What are my memories?
Yeah.
Well, that was, I remember that '91, we had a Monte tumor in our team who was obviously, was a great player in college at Michigan and went on to do really well for the New York Giants. I think he had like an 11-year NFL career.
A Super Bowl champion, too, I think.
Yeah, he's Super Bowl champion as well, yeah. And then we had Patrick Walsh was our running back as a junior. And
Ali Avery, was he the quarterback?
Ali Avery was the quarterback, yeah. And
then they had Reagan Upshaw, I think.
Reagan Upshaw, absolutely.
Right.
So, they had a really good team. Now he's our dean of students, but Joe Aliotti and his brother-in-law Jerry Hayfleck were on the staff with Herc Pardee, and they were really good coaches. I mean, Jerry's done really well at American River. Obviously, Joey's helped us here tremendously over the years. So they had a great staff, and we'd beaten them earlier that year, but they had like 3 bombs that they were wide open that they missed on, and so we didn't really outplay them that game. So we were pretty nervous about that game going in. We knew it was going to be a tough game. And, we were driving to tie the game. It was kind of a freak play. It was Allie kind of like I don't know if there was the music in the stands or something, but it was like he heard a whistle, like someone had jumped off sides. And so the whole play, everyone was kind of jumbled. The offensive line was jumbled. It looked like it was offside somewhere, and then nothing was whistled, did not blow. I think maybe a drum beat or something caused everyone to move, and it should have been offsides, and our whole play got messed up, and he rolled out and accidentally, and hit it. Charlie Ramirez picked it off, and, that sealed the game for them. But actually, that was probably one of the best things that ever happened to us because it was the impetus for the next year. That team, Patrick Walsh and those guys, had an awesome year, and it started the winning streak.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it did start with Patrick Walsh. I mean, he was the leader. He's the coach, I think, of Sarah now. But yeah, it started in '92 with him laying the foundation for what went on, I think, into about 2003 or 2004.
Yeah, it went all the way to 2003. There's no doubt about it. And he had a lot of great teammates, not just Patrick. We had a lot of great teammates on that team, and that was one of the better teams we've ever had here in the sense of not just talent, but also just heart and grit. And they like that meant that loss just burned in their hearts, and they went out and played every game like it was their last. And so they were really a lot of fun to coach.
Yeah, right. The teams you played in '92 were probably upset with Pitt for beating you guys. I mean, yeah, maybe. Actually, hold on.